Hello, my name is Diane Abatemarco. I'm the Chief of Pediatric Population Health Research in the Department of Pediatrics and an Associate Professor at Jefferson University. And today I want to talk with you briefly about organizational skills and mindfulness and how they can enhance your your work and the quality of life. So when we talk about mindfulness and meditation, there is evidence that there are immediate effects, such as lowering heart rate and blood pressure, it activates a soothing relaxation response. So in a sense, we're not reacting, but responding to what comes toward us. It settles that flight or fight stress response that we have in our limbic system, and it actually activates sensory awareness, and there's an enhanced ability to control attention. The long-term effects of mindfulness as I mentioned, it dampens reactivity to stress, almost in a practiced way. It increases positive emotions through the left frontal lobe activation and allows there to be, so it's dampening those negative reactive responses and increasing positive responses. It also it enhances the neural integration and self-regulation from increased activity in the middle prefrontal cortex. So what this means is it monitors and inhibits the limbic firing responses, and there's greater response flexitivity for pausing before acting, and that's built in as a process that comes from practicing mindfulness, which I'll explain in a bit. So it also enhances the empathetic resonance, seeing the mind of the other, and increased insight and self-awareness. It's only sitting meditation that actually enhances insight and self-awareness, where yoga would help calm the nervous system and calm the person. Sitting meditation actually creates an environment for insight into issues that you may not have really had control of or insight to in the past. And there's also a long-term effect of mindfulness meditation is that it modulates fear. And lowers the limbic response to what would normally be a fear response. And then ultimately, long-term, we believe that it is also a modulation of morality. So what is mindfulness? So mindfulness is just sitting, doing nothing, focusing on your breath would be one exercise. So you could focus on your breath, and it's the breath coming in and out, or you can focus on listening. You might sit in a chair and just be open to what you're hearing, what comes in to you, looking at how you judge what is coming in, because really we want to stay away from judgment. So watching what your mind does with sound. So either listening to a sound or breathing, just continuously bringing your mind back to the breath or what you're hearing, and not doing it in a non-judgmental way. So that means not judging what you're hearing or not judging how your breath feels. It also means, as Jon Kabat-Zinn says, not judging the judging. So that means just sitting comfortably 10 minutes a day, 10 minutes of doing absolutely nothing, sitting comfortable. And when we say sitting comfortable, we're saying sit back either on the floor with your legs crossed and on a cushion, or sitting in a chair where your head is actually reaching to the sky, the crown of your head. and being aware of your breath coming in through your nose and out through your nose, and watching your thoughts as they come in. Letting those thoughts come in. You no need to control them, but just watching them and letting them go and coming back to the breath. And each time you come back to the breath is a moment of deep mindfulness. And we're saying 10 minutes a day. There are people like John Kabat-Zinn, when you do mindful-based stress reduction, he says you work up to 45 minutes a day. Diane, who's one of our foremost national respected teachers in mindful-based stress reduction and is at Jefferson in Philadelphia, says 20 to 25 minutes a day is sufficient. But you can sit for 10 minutes a day and see an effect. So now I want to switch gears a bit, but it's really building on mindfulness. Susan Johnson, who is the ombudsman at the University of Iowa and a OBGYN professor, has come up with this idea about balancing your work life and organizing your work life. And so this is sort of the yin to the yang of mindfulness, is how do we actually bring balance to our job? So she says that in order to determine what work you need to do, because we have more work on our plate generally than we can do, the criteria would be it's your job. So that's, anything that comes into your job is a commitment you've made, and that should be your priority. And there are other things you've promised, and promises are really important. Keeping your commitments to others is a way of fulfilling yourself and treating yourself with compassion. Those things that you promise and you're unable to do, but you don't deal with, tend to really be heartbreaking and get in the way of other productive work. And then under the line, the priority is, if it's work related to your long-term goal, it should be a priority. And 4, how interesting is it to you? That might be another reason to do the work in front of you. 5, you could see that's a weaker priority, things you believe you should do, but are not part of your job. You could really start to question those. And lastly, you believe you're the only one who could do this work. That should clue you in also to the fact that that can't be a priority, because that's probably untrue. What we say in order to be productive researchers is you really need to empty your head. And that's what the mindfulness helps you do, is empty your head. And to empty your head when you're at work is a little difficult. So we have a couple of issues. We say that your desk should be absolutely clear. In fact, if your desk has piles of it, I'm going to suggest to you that today, at some point in your day, you gather all those piles and put them on the floor. We're not talking about your office looking clean or impressing anyone. We're talking about having a clear space. And to have a clear space, all we want on the desk is a pen, a pencil, a pad, an inbox. That's really, really all we want. And what goes in the inbox, there are rules to that too, are perhaps notes that you took, incoming mail if mail still comes to you by snail mail, and journals. The pad is essential. So I would say everyone needs to go out and buy a favorite pad that with the lines or graphed or blank or dots, because it will be a running list pad. And some people actually use index cards as well, that you can then drop into your inbox. But you'll put a running list, and this is what is essential. You'll put everything you think of on this list all day long. As things come up and you think, oh, I really wanted to get back to someone to ask this question. Okay, that gets written on your list. And then once you write it on your list, it actually frees your mental space. Another important aspect of the list is you've got to really put your home life on your list. Let's be honest. We can't separate when we go home. We often think about work when we're home. So we do think about, it's right to think about home while we're at work. So if we're organizing a bar mitzvah or a Christmas party, or we need the plumber to come in or Habitat to come pick up what we want to give away, that's fine. Put that on your list as well. And then one of the rules of this work is to schedule larger tasks, 2 or 3, on the days on your calendar. For instance, if you have to review a paper, that's a commitment you've made to review a paper for a journal, then what you would do is you would schedule that. So I might put Wednesday, 11 to 12:30. I'm going to review and read a paper. Maybe 2 hours. The rules of reviewing a paper is that it should take no more than 4 and should probably be on average 2 hours. So I'm going to schedule somehow an hour and a half to 2 hours in my schedule on one day. I'm going to schedule 1 or 2 other things that are that big during the day. It could be 2 on a day that I have a lot of meetings. And that's how we get the big task off our to-do list. So there are some internet guidelines too, okay? Here's the deal. No opening emails on first thing on Monday morning. It's usually a fear response to go to the emails to see what trouble is brewing, because we think that if we can, kind of get into it, we'll prevent something from hitting us. But really, it's not a great thing to look at your email first thing in the morning. The first thing in the morning, especially if you're an MRDA a recipient, would be to write. So if you have a few hours where you're not doing you don't have clinical responsibility, and you go to your email, or even if it's an hour that you think you could go to your email, on Monday morning, your commitment to yourself should be writing. It should be writing a paper, writing a grant, writing anything that moves you towards becoming an independent researcher. And there's a particular reason we suggest that you do this. And the reason is that if you are able to invest in yourself the first thing on Monday morning, it will carry through for you the rest of the week. So it'll actually be an anchor that you will be drawn back to from your productivity. In the opposite way, if you immediately go to emails the first thing, you will be wrapped up in emails, and you'll never find a time during your week unless you really force yourself to do the writing that you need to do. So a couple of internet guidelines. And when you open your emails, which would be 11 o'clock on Monday morning for the first time, if the email response is 2 minutes or less, you do it immediately. You don't leave it. You don't skip anything in your email. Every email that is opened must be dealt with. So either respond immediately if it takes 2 minutes or less. You're not sure about what an email is asking, or the email goes on and on and on, you do have permission. You can give permission to yourself to send it back to the person and ask, what in this do you need from me? People usually giggle when I say that to them because it's so out of the ordinary. But it is a way to be more productive and get the people who send you really big emails to try to shorten up, be more brief. You're not reading a chapter from them. It's supposed to be quick communication. Okay, and so suppose you want to defer. There are things there that you need to think about or might take you longer. Then you need to create you need to have a folder created. And I would say when you clear off your desk, you may want to create a new folder called AAA Follow-Up, which would be the first folder on the left-hand side of your screen, and move everything that takes some work into that, as well as put it on your list of things to do. So you're on your pad, you're writing, review paper, respond to your supervisor's request or whatever the issue is. It's in the a follow-up folder. You haven't lost that email. It's no longer in your inbox. And it is also on this list that you can begin to work with. So that's the first. The second is empty your inbox. Now, what in the world does that mean? How does one empty 1,000 emails? Generally, when Susan Johnson does this presentation, she asks who has 1,000 emails, and she's usually talking to researchers, healthcare and physician researchers, and the majority of the people in the room have 1,000 emails or more in their inbox. And she says, okay, so starting today, and this was I put in December 2011 because that was the time I first began doing this. I created a new folder called December 1st, 2011, and I took my entire inbox, every file, every email, and put it in this new folder. That allowed me to have a clean inbox. So for instance, today's a bad day. I've got emails. I've been traveling a lot for work, so I think I might have 12 emails in my inbox. Typically on Friday afternoon, I have 3 or less from this system. And again, the reason we do this is really to clear our minds. And so as I explained, we set a time limit on email. We stick to it. That's, well, I didn't actually say this yet. So at 11 o'clock on Monday, when you do go to read your email, we set a timer, a little chime if we can't control ourselves, and we stick to it. So I say 11 to 11:40, I'm going to respond to emails. And then I'm going to move away from emails and to move to something on my to-do list. And I said, you can delete any item that can be deleted without opening. There are some rules to this. Generally, if I'm one of 100 people that are CC'd and the topic doesn't seem pertinent to me, I may delete it. If it's very important, it's going to come back to me. Another thing with taking all the emails and putting in my December 1st, 2011 file is you can guarantee that if you threw something in there that was of great importance, it's going to come back as a new email. And the other thing you might want to put on your to-do list is to go to that December 1 file and do an hour of that once a week to get rid of it. But when you do go to do that, I guarantee you're going to do a lot of deleting because these emails sort of repeat themselves. Don't look at an email unless you have time, and don't skip, you must open. So that's kind of a little summary. I talked about this too. Daily, one important action before opening the email, write. Especially those of you who are being mentored. This is what your mentor funding is for, and this rule supports that. Look at emails second, and then pick 1 to 3 key actions from your to-do list and do those actions as soon as you can. And all of that's going to reinforce what all of that does is having the clean, empty desk is like sitting in mindfulness and breathing. They're openings. They open you to be creative and productive. Everything that sits on your desk also sits in your mind. So every time you look at a pile, you consciously or unconsciously, some activity goes on in your brain about that pile of paper or those emails. So clearing your brain is a great way to, as we put it in mindfulness, we often say before mindfulness that it always feels like our cup is overflowing. But once we sit in mindfulness and we clear our heads, we tend to feel that our cup is bigger than we thought it was. And that's a nice feeling. So we learn to see our thoughts and feelings without reacting impulsively. This is really a quality of life issue. Jon Kabat-Zinn says once you sit for mindfulness, and with mindfulness, in the beginning it may feel like a kind of forcing yourself to do it and a little unnatural, but eventually it becomes a love affair. With the openness and seeing how our minds work and how they trick us and who we are underneath all of that ruminating and worry. So we become calmer in the way we both work and live, clearing away the piles on our desk, in our inbox, and in our mind leaves room for an abundance of creativity. Even if you say, I'm not a very creative person, everyone can be creative, and you might do these things and find a different part of you. And it's also important, kind of that life work balance is not ruminating or thinking about the past and present. We find more time in our day to be productive if we're not worrying about what did we say at that meeting that might have been awkward, or am I going to have a patient today that I may not know how to deal with? Worrying about that really is not going to solve it. We're gonna stay those things. We're gonna do as well, if not better, without the worry. So I'll just go back to my picture to say, if you could take a few minutes in your day, and you might want to just start with 1 or 2 minutes a day and sitting and just letting your breath come in and out. I do it in the morning. My teachers, John Kabat-Zinn and Diane have impressed on me to do it first thing before my mind is, really revved up, although pretty much it is revved up the minute I wake up, but it's slower when I first get out of bed in the morning. But even if it's during the day, a few minutes before your lunch, anytime you can do it, it'll be helpful. And what will happen is you will find that you'll watch your mind and not be hooked into storylines that either might frighten you, make you feel bad, or worry. So with that, I'm going to sign off. I encourage you, if this is interesting to you, to get in touch with me. This is what my research is primarily focused on. My funding primarily comes from mindfulness, doing research on mindfulness, and I look forward to having conversations with you, not just electronically, but in person. So please reach out to me if you think that you would like more information on organizing your work or on a mindful meditation to improve the quality of your life. And today and every day, have a great day. Thank you.